Welcome to Arithmetic Operators. We'll be looking at a couple of things today. First of all, we'll be figuring out what an arithmetic operator is. Then we'll look at some examples of it and its use. And then we'll look at the plus plus and minus minus operators, which are also known as the increment and decrement operators. So, what is an arithmetic operator? It's a symbol for arithmetic operations. What is an arithmetic operation, you might ask? An arithmetic operation is anything like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So the different operators that we'll be looking at today, as you can see on the second bullet point, are the plus symbol, the minus symbol, the asterisk, the slash, and the percent sign. Now, arithmetic operators, as we know, are used for arithmetic operations, and that's why it makes sense that we only use them with the double and integer types. You can't add Boolean types because they're true and false values. And so let's start off by looking at the first arithmetic operator, which is the plus sign. Now, as you can probably tell, it stands for addition, and it could be anything like x plus 2, where x is a variable that we've already defined. Next, let's look at the minus or the dash symbol. This stands for subtraction, and an example of it would be y minus 1, where y is a variable that has already been defined. Next, let's look at the asterisk. The asterisk stands for multiplication, and an example of that is x multiplied by 3, where x is a variable that has already been defined. Next, let's look at the slash. The slash stands for division. And as we can see an example, y divided by 4. Now there's an important thing that comes along with division, especially when you're dividing integers. So if you were to be dividing 6 divided by 4, you would expect the answer to be 1.5, but the computer actually interprets it to be 1. Because when the computer is dividing, it automatically assumes that its answer has to be an integer. And when it assumes its answer has to be an integer, once it gets the decimal value it should be, it truncates all the digits after the decimal. So 1.5 gets its 0.5 removed and it becomes 1. This is a common mistake that programmers make, and it's important to remember that the computer is always gonna go for integers at first unless it's indicated to use a different type. So the solution to this would be to put double in parentheses before that and then do 6 divided by 4. This would get you a result of 1.5, and that's because you're casting the result to the double type. We went over casting variables a little bit earlier in the course. And the last arithmetic operator that we'll be looking at today is the percent sign. This is also known as the modulus, and it basically stands for the remainder. So if you were to do 10 mod 3, then you would get 1, because when you're dividing 10 by 3, the remainder comes out to be 1. So that's where the modulus is used. You can tell what the remainder is. Now you may be wondering what the use of this is. Well, first of all, it can tell you whether two different numbers are divisible to each other. If you did something like x mod 2, and then you check, and if it equals 0, then you know that x is divisible by 0 and it's even. So this can be very useful in different programs. Now let's take a look at the increment and decrement operators. So the first increment operator is plus plus. So let's look at the example, x plus plus. Now that's the same statement as x plus 1. Similarly, the decrement operator is minus minus. So x minus minus, that's literally the same thing as x minus 1. So the purpose of the increment and decrement operator, they don't really have a very important purpose because they can be replaced with a simple statement, but they make the life easier and more clear for the programmers. So that's why they're used. And usually they're used when you're keeping count, and as we'll go over this more in control structures, but as when you're keeping count, you want to increase one by one, so you often use x plus plus. Now this also brings up an important topic of plus plus x versus x plus plus. So as you can see, it's the same increment operator. It's simply one is put before the variable and one is put after the variable. In a simple statement, that wouldn't have a difference. But if we look at the statements on the fifth bullet point, we can see that print plus plus x and print x plus plus may have different results. So let's say that x is equal to 2. The first statement, print plus plus x, will come out to be 3. The second statement, print x plus plus, will come out to be 2. This is because when the plus plus is placed before the variable, the operation of adding 1 to the variable happens before the printing operation happens. In the other case, because the plus plus is placed after the x variable, the printing happens before the plus 1 is added. So that's the major difference, and keep in mind that the AP Computer Science exam does not require you to know the difference between the two, but it is important because it can lead to incorrect results in programs. And so today we've looked at arithmetic operators and increment and decrement operators. They're very basic math, and they're very important part of Java for control structures, so it's important to get a good grasp of them.